Today I'm going to teach you all about the circle of fifths, why it's helpful, why it's useful, and how to use it. So the circle of fifths is this sort of mythical thing that I vaguely knew about in middle school, and I thought if I understood the circle of fifths, then I would be a great musician, and it was something important to know to be a good musician. Then in high school, I learned what the circle of fifths was and how to create it and sort of what it did, but I still didn't really understand the purpose of it until I was a little bit older and took AP Music Theory and then my theory classes in college. So at the most fundamental, simple level, it's not some crazy, exciting, mythical thing. It's just a tool to help you remember the key signatures of your scales. And it also isn't that complicated. As long as you can count to 5 and you know what the numbers of a clock are like, then you're going to be in fine shape. Oh, you do probably also need to know the alphabet. So you know that all of the major scales have different key signatures, and you know in music we play with different key signatures. And if you are coming here from my transposition video, then you know how those key signatures come about, because we need to maintain the same pattern of intervals in a major scale. So we have to add in sharps or add in flats to the key signature in order for that pattern of intervals to be the same and for it to still sound like a major scale. If you've ever tried playing a major scale and forgot to include the key signature, then you probably got something that sounded a little bit weird and definitely not like a major scale. And that's because you weren't applying the key signature to retain the pattern of intervals that make it sound like a major scale. It's also true for minor scales or any other kind of scale you may be playing. You have to have the key signature, or if it's a chromatic scale or one of those weird ones, you have to have the accidentals in order for it to have the proper interval pattern for it to be the scale that it's supposed to be. A major scale has one interval pattern, a minor scale has one interval pattern, a chromatic scale has a different interval pattern, and all of those interval patterns are what makes it a major or a minor or a chromatic or whatever kind of scale you may be playing. So what the circle of fifths does is it tells us what the key signature is for what key we want to play in. So say we want to play in C major. C major is up here at the top, so it has 0 sharps or flats in the key signature. So that probably makes sense, and you probably know that your C major scale doesn't have any sharps or flats. Say though we wanted to play over in the key of E major. That's 1, 2, 3, 4 positions around the circle. So that means that there's 4 sharps in this scale. So if you've played an E major scale before and knew that there were 4 sharps in it, now you know why. And the circle of fifths is the tool to help us remember that there's 4 sharps in the key of E major. Say we went the other direction though, and we were going to play in the key of B flat. You may know that the key of B flat has 2 flats in it, and the circle of fifths tells us that because we go 1, 2, okay, there's 2 flats here. The reason why it's flats and not sharps, or the reason why it's 2 flats rather than 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 sharps is because we're going around this way. So when you go this way, you start at 1 and count flats going counterclockwise. You could theoretically kind of maybe play in a key of 10 sharps, but there's only actually 7 different note names. So a key of 10 sharps would be the key signature of F double sharp, C double sharp, G double sharp, D sharp, A sharp, E sharp, B sharp, which would be a nasty key signature if I do say so myself. And we pretty much never ever put double sharps or double flats. Actually, never ever ever have I ever seen a key signature with double flats or double sharps in it, because we can just change it. So rather than it being 3 double sharps and 4 sharps for a key of theoretically 10 sharps, we can just have 2 flats, and it ends up being exactly the same notes and sounds exactly the same. There are a couple instances where there is some overlap, where we have either sharp keys or flat keys that sound exactly the same. So starting at F sharp, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sharps, or it's also 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 flats. So if you're playing in the key of F sharp, then you have a key signature of 6 sharps. But you could also play in the key signature of G flat with 6 flats, and you're playing exactly the same notes. It's that idea of enharmonic equivalence where F sharp, you play starting on F sharp. G flat, you play starting on G flat. And you end up playing exactly the same notes, whether it's 6 sharp notes or 6 flat notes. Sometimes that carries over for these two keys next to it too. Sometimes you could play, instead of B with 5 sharps, you could play in C flat with 7 flats, or you could play in D flat with 5 flats, or you could play in the key of C sharp with 7 sharps. It sort of depends on what the composer did, how the transposing of instruments works out, etc., for what key that you'll be actually playing in. The next very important thing that you're going to need to know once you're able to figure out the number of sharps or the number of flats is what the sharps and flats actually are. And that's where the order of sharps or the order of flats, whichever way you look at it, comes in. So the order of sharps is F, C, G, D, A, E, B. And you can come up with all kinds of fun acronyms to memorize this. The one that I learned was fat cats go down alleys eating birds, or eating bananas if you're like vegetarian cats. And that is the order of sharps. But if you go the other direction, it's the order of flats as well. So if we have, say, 2 sharps, then we go F, C, those are our 2 sharps. If we have 2 flats, then we go B, E, and that's our 2 flats. For remembering the order of flats, you can think of bead, greatest common factor is what I learned, so it's B, E, A, D, G, C, F, and that'll get you all the way up to 7 flats for the key of C flat would be B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat, F flat. And it's always the same order for whatever key you're playing in. So D, we had F sharp and C sharp. A, we have F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. E, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, D sharp. And so on as we go around. So between the circle of fifths and the order of sharps or the order of flats, whichever way you look at it, or whichever way you need it to figure out the key, then you can figure out any key signature for any of the 12 or even 15 if you include the alternate versions of these lower ones of all of the major scales. The circle of fifths has one other cool functionality to it, which is actually for figuring out the key signatures of minor scales as well. So C has 0 sharps or flats, and its relative minor is A, and it's its relative minor because A also has 0 sharps or flats. G, the relative minor, is E, D is B, A is F sharp, E is C sharp, B is G sharp or A flat, F sharp is E flat, D flat is B flat, A flat is F, E flat is C, B flat is G, and F is D. So those are all the minor scales. The way that I figured that out was, again, actually by using the circle of fifths. So there's a couple different ways to do this. The sort of standard way is that the minor scale is the 6th note of the major scale. So if we go C, D, E, F, G, A, then we're at 6. The trick, though, that you can do is just go around the circle of fifths. So A is this one, E is this one, B is this one, F sharp is this one. So we're actually just going around our own circle of fifths, but just starting in a different position. And the start of it is actually C over here. And you'll notice C, G, D, and it goes on around in that pattern, sort of following itself. So the major scale is one circle, and the minor scales are sort of a rotated version of that, because minor scales are based off of the major scales. So you can memorize your circle of fifths for both the major scales and for the minor scales. And again, it works exactly the same for the key signatures, where F sharp is over at this 3 o'clock position. So F sharp minor has 3 sharps, F sharp, C sharp, G sharp, just like A major has 3 sharps. So I hope this is feeling pretty straightforward and you're feeling comfortable with figuring out your major scales. This is just a tool for figuring out the key signatures of the scales. And then to play the scale, you just start on whatever note the scale is and then play it with that key signature. So say we're over here on E flat, I just start on E flat and I play with 1, 2, 3 flats, B flat, E flat, A flat. So I'll play E flat, F, G, A flat, B flat, C, D, E flat. And that's the scale. So with this tool, you can figure out the key signature for any major or minor scale that you'll ever play, because these are the only ones that exist, in fact. But now, let's imagine that you didn't have this written out in front of you. How would you go about figuring it out? So we already talked about how to figure out the order of sharps and how to figure out the minor scales based off of the major scales. But say you didn't have a circle of fifths at all, how would you figure out the circle of fifths to begin with? So eventually you will just remember this and have it memorized. For me, I can just think, okay, B, that's 5 sharps. A flat, that's 4 flats. D flat, 5 flats. I just know it off the top of my head because I've done it so many times, but you can actually figure it out sort of in a more long form way to be really reliable and to know what your key signatures will be no matter what. So as long as you can remember the alphabet, how to count to 5, and that it starts on C, then you'll be in good shape. So we start up here at our sort of 12 o'clock position on C, and then we go around by fifths, and that's why it's called the circle of fifths. So let's take our first one. We start on C, and then we count C, D, E, F, G. Make sure that you count whatever note you're starting on as 1 and not as 0. So C is 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, C, D, E, F, G. So we go around here to G. Then we do that again, G, A, B, C, D. Remember also that when you're going from G, it doesn't go G, H, I, J, because it's not the normal alphabet, it's the musical alphabet. And once we get to G, we loop back around to A. So we have C, we have G, we have D. You can count up another 5, D, E, F, G, A. So we're at A again. 5, A, B, C, D, E. E, F, G, A, B, and then B, C, D, E, F. But wait a second, wasn't F down here actually F sharp or G flat? So this is the one little tricky bit to the circle of fifths, and it's similar to if you watch the transposition video, and I really encourage you to watch that because it's very in-depth about how to transpose. You remember in that one we talked about we can't just go up a whole step by letters, we have to go up the appropriate number of half steps. So actually we aren't just going to 5, C, D, E, F, G, and I actually lied to you, you might actually need to count to 7 and know your chromatic scale to really do this properly, but that's okay. So C in half steps is C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, G. That's 7 half steps. And this is confusing because when you're talking about the half steps in between notes, how many half steps are in between notes, in this case we actually count C as 0 because we're looking at the distance from note to note rather than the number of notes. So if you're counting 5, it's C, D, E, F, G. If you're counting half steps, it's C to C sharp is 1, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp, and then we're at G. So we have to go 7 half steps. Now if you go 7 half steps from B, you get B is 0, to C is 1, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F, F sharp. So it's actually F sharp in order for this to be a true fifth. We call this a perfect fifth interval. If you just go from B to F, you actually get a diminished fifth or an augmented fourth or a tritone, which isn't a perfect fifth. And this is the circle of perfect fifths, not the circle of whatever fifths you want. So we have to make sure that we get F sharp here, and then we can continue around. The other way that you can think about it is that you have to be actually counting 5 notes in the key signature of the scale. So if we were in B, which has 5 sharps, it would be B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp is the fifth note. You can do that for every single one of them and it still works out. C, D, E, F, G, G, A, B, C, D, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp. And that's why this is F sharp. Then we will actually stop there, because if you continue going around by fifths, it starts to get a little weird and you have to switch over to flats, which works okay. You go F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, counting in the key signature, and you'll end up here at C sharp, which is one way to think of this, but more commonly actually, this key is called D flat, because it's on the flat side of the scale, and because it's easier to think about 5 flats rather than 7 sharps. You'll also find, if you count F sharp and count the intervals, F sharp to G, G to G sharp to A sharp, B, C, C sharp is 7, and C sharp's the same as D flat, so that's D flat. So you can continue around just going by fifths, but there's actually a shortcut that works better, and that's by using the circle of fourths, which is actually exactly the same thing, but it's just the opposite direction. So if you go from C and then go up 4, C, D, E, F, so that's 4 notes, then you get the 1 o'clock position over here, which is F. And F has 1 flat, which is B flat. So if we count in the key of F, F, G, A, B flat is 4 notes. And we end up here at B flat. We know this isn't B natural because if you go by the half steps between the notes, we have from C to F is C to C sharp is 1, D, D sharp, E, F. So there's 5 half steps in between each perfect fourth. If we start at F and go up 5 half steps, F to F sharp is 1, F sharp to G is 2, G sharp, A, and then A sharp, or B flat, and that's our 5th one. So 5 half steps gets us to B flat. We can continue counting in the key signature or count by half steps. In the key signature, it's B flat, C, D, E flat is 4, or by half steps, it's B flat to B is 1, B to C to C sharp to D, D to D sharp, which is the same as E flat. Then we go up 5 more notes, E flat, F, G, A flat, and we're at A flat because we go up 4 from E flat because we're going around the circle of fourths. You can keep working through the pattern and you'll find that you actually go through fourths all the way around, just like you can go through fifths all the way around. And that's how you figure out the circle of fifths if you don't have it. And now you already know how to use it to figure out your key signatures for your scales because we went over that in the first half of this video. And that's all you'll ever need to do with the circle of fifths. You just figure out what it is so that you can figure out what position each key is on it, so you can figure out the key signature for the scale. Then you use the order of sharps and flats to put the right sharps or flats into the scale. Then you start on the note and you can play your scale. So it seems very complicated and seems very magical, but really at the end of the day, it's just a simple tool to help you work through your scales and to know your key signatures for your scales so that you can play all your major scales. And then from there, you can do transposition, so you can transpose keys or pieces or exercises to different keys and different scales. So you'll be able to play fluidly in all 12 keys and be comfortable with all of the notes on the instrument. I hope this has been helpful for you to clarify some things about the circle of fifths, key signatures, scales, etc. If you haven't checked out the transposing video and the video on transposition, I encourage you to do that. That's more of this sort of music theory stuff, explaining how scales and moving from key to key works. And I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. This stuff can take a bit of thinking through before you really get it, but it's really cool. The more you work through it and the more you think through it, the more things pop up and you start to see the patterns of how music works and get a better understanding of music theory in general. So thanks so much for watching. I hope this has been helpful, and I will see you in another video.